All right, welcome everybody. So glad to have you here. And the purpose of this meeting is we gave every proposer in our deep funding governance experiment a chance, an option to present their proposal to the community and to explain it a little bit and engage and maybe answer some questions. So the purpose would be not to discuss it in depth and all the details, etc. But I think the main purpose of today should be to clarify that everybody is clear what the proposal is about and what it is not about, so they can have a clear opinion about it. We just discussed the order of things that we will do. We will do it in the same way as they were added to the platform, which means that I have to kick this off. We'll try to spend not more than 10 minutes on each proposal, including a presentation and some question and answers that may pop up. So my proposal is about experts. So a reason to have expert ratings is to make it easier for the community to make a good and unbiased selection of all the proposals coming in. We saw in the last round, there were a lot of proposals, very differentiated, some really high level, more an idea, and some extremely detailed in their technical workings. And probably it's not easy for everybody to wrap their head around it, and to also not to assess whether a good idea is also a feasible idea, and whether the team and the amount of funds asked are actually adequate to reach the goal that they paint out. So sometimes they may have a very commendable goal and purpose, but if an expert would say this is technically not realistic, or it is realistic but you need to have 10 times the funded amount, that would be very relevant information for the community to base their judgment on. On top of that, it would also make the selection process easier. Not everybody has the time to spend an hour or more on each proposal to go through it. Some are really lengthy, and to form an opinion in depth, and then having some guides there, some trusted guides and unbiased neutral guides would be helpful. So what I would propose is to have some experts at some point, to have them assess each proposal based on its technical feasibility, on its viability based on budget and team, and maybe also on what you could call desirability or marketing. So is there a need for this service? Is there a competition what is the competition in the market? Does it fulfill a need in the market? So these things. Very important is that this would be purely advisory. So these experts would give their opinion, but any community member can ignore it or do something with it as they like. And then finally, there are some things that I haven't solved here yet. I haven't solved where to find these experts. I haven't solved yet how to incentivize them or pay them for their needs. And I also haven't solved the idea of how we can scale it. So if we have a small group of experts, it will be hard for them to assess every proposal. So we would somehow need to filter that and make them work on the most important ones, or the most expensive ones, or the most interesting ones, or whatever. So there are some steps to be made after we go that direction, but that is the basic premises of this proposal. Any questions? Remarks?
My only question, and sorry if you touched on this initially, is like the initial vetting of those experts. And would it be kind of from the community, or would it be from the foundation or the ecosystem itself?
Yeah, that's a good point. So with many of these things, it's not that hard to paint it out how it should be. 2 years from now, how it should function. But to get there and the transition to get there, that is often the hardest part. So one option that I think would be interesting, especially if we wouldn't do it maybe in round 2, but in round 3 or 4, is to ask former candidates and awarded teams to help with this, also in the way of doing something back to the community, giving back. I can also imagine that we would have completely neutral third parties, some relations that we have that are not related to anything. I can also imagine people from SingularityNET, because that might be easiest, and we can assume that they have sufficient knowledge about the topics. And I'm also not against community members, but it would need to be community members that are somehow capable of doing this. And yeah, there will be very different things, like I say, very technical ones and more marketing ones. So yeah, we would need to have either a very diversified team of experts or experts that are very broadly oriented. But I can also imagine it would be a mix of these 3 people that would have 2 from each environment, and maybe they can even rate each other.
Right. Why I asked for initial vetting, because I feel like once the deep fund progresses more and people build reputation throughout the platform, then experts could possibly be selected based on their reputation. But it's just getting there, like you said.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in my ideal dream scenario, what I see is that we have some dedicated experts that will do a subset of proposals that are really domain experts outside of our community and outside of SNET. And then we have a reputation-based system across all proposals where the ratings and the reviews of the people with the highest reputation will count most, and that would create a kind of rating. That would be ideal, but that would be the 2 years from now scenario. And yeah, the hard part is, as I said, getting there, and also incentivizing these people. If it would be domain experts, these people are very demanded and probably have high salaries. So not sure exactly what would be their motivation to help us with this. Mihai, you had your hand up before?
Yes, but I had the same topic on my mind, except exactly as Joanna, on how we would identify said experts, because this is a common topic in at least a few of the proposals that we have on our hand. They all revolve around the same topic, and I think this is quite important to touch on, and you already did, so my hand was lowered at the moment.
All right, then let's say we have covered this proposal, and if any other questions come up or comments or remarks from you people here, people from the community watching this, then you can still engage on this on our portal and ask questions there. Peter, you have your hand up. I'm not sure if you want to ask a question or if you want to start your own presentation.
No. I wanted to ask something about yours. Made me wonder. I mean, we're quite in the early stage of round 1 still, but has there been so far any showing of like a team actually being lower quality than they pretended to be?
No,
to put them on the spot like this, maybe, but
yeah, they're all awful. No, actually, I'm delighted by the people. They're very different. They're different people and different projects and different speeds that they do things. So I'm really happy with the decision that we are paying out the disbursements based on their own speed of delivering things. But what I see in the meetings that we have, and probably you also see when you watch the recordings of that, at least some of it is on camera and some of it is off camera, but I really like the dynamics between those teams, because even if there are only 2 or 3 teams together, there is overlap and they can answer each other's questions and they have things in common. And I hope as we continue and we get more teams that we will create a community and ecosystem of developers, and not just developers, right? It's also marketeers and creative people, etc. already. But I think that will only increase. So that's another good reason to also keep them involved, e.g., for example, by giving them a role as a community expert, or community as an expert, a domain expert. Yeah. Thank you. Then, Peter, about putting people on the spot. Let's put you on the spot with, well, your this is biased, but your great proposal.
Thanks. Yeah, no problem. Basically, the proposal is to have a separate category for not so much funding teams that want to build a full product, but who already have a service available, and then simply assist or use the funding for onboarding onto the platform. Yeah, that's the very broad outline. There were some issues brought up in the on Sway, which I thought was interesting. For example, Tivo pointing out that, let's say, if we would have a round where people can simply put the service forward and then want to do is onboarding, we need to verify that it's actually theirs. I haven't figured out a solution to that one yet, but it's quite puzzling. I mean, let's say something is on GitHub, you could prove by commenting and stuff, but sorry for diving in there. Yeah, basically that's it. It's simply funding people for the actual onboarding process.
Would it be necessary that it would be theirs if it would be open source available and somebody took the initiative on pushing it forward and put it on our platform? Would that also be sufficient?
I would feel if once you start monetizing something which you simply took, I mean, it depends on the licenses, I guess. It's not my area of expertise, but yeah, once there's yeah, you can just scour the internet and paste it all on there and get the funding for uploading. So I do think yeah, I would either want to see like actual proof that this is completely, the license allows for doing what you're doing, or some sense of ownership. But that's just my personal, I'm not an expert on licenses.
Yeah, we should make sure that we're not legally liable and that anybody who does it does have the rights to do so. I think that makes total sense. But if they actually have to be the creator, I'm not 100% sure that. Mihai, you have a question.
Yeah, on Peter's proposal, I think it sounds really great because after all, our main objective is seeding SingularityNet's AI marketplace with more and more modules that would be interconnected in order to form said AGI. However, would we need some sort of audit process or some sort of evaluation process into these modules before they are accepted on the marketplace in order to avoid, let's say, security problems or hidden features or other hard-coded features that we may not anticipate? I think it's a great idea, but I also think that we should be really careful in regards to which systems we bring into our marketplace, because once you bring such a system and integrate it, onboard it, it could be more of a problem than a feature. So as food for thought, we should probably consider how would we be able to properly evaluate or create standards based on which already existing systems would be accepted or not.
Yeah, very fair. I mean, we have these processes in place for current onboarding already. So in a way, that can simply be utilized. Alternatively, we could require open source. I'm not sure if we have to. I'm not an expert on this topic, I have to admit, so it's hard for me to concretely answer it.
I would argue that this question that you have me high is not just for this proposal, but it goes for every service that is being put on our platform. And the way we treat that is that our platform is completely open and decentralized, so anybody can put anything on it they want. But our marketplace is not. So we will actually define what we will and will not publish on our marketplace, and we will continue to do so. And it should be aligned with our purposes, etc.
May I just say something here? Maybe there's a crossover here with something that Cardano does, for example, with the dApps that are being built on Cardano, is they do audits, and then rather than because I don't know if we can't like have people showcase their dApps or not, but they verify them. So if a user wants to use this dApp, for example, they can see the verified tag, which means that this is trustable and it's been audited and verified by experts and smart contract auditors and stuff like that. So maybe something similar could work here.
I think that's pretty much in place already. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, Jan, but that's pretty much there, right? This, yeah, the vouching a proper check.
Yeah, we have some kind of auditing process, and but it's not just before publishing; it's also after publishing. We used to have it quite strictly before publishing. Now we're a little bit more easier on that, but we will continue to track services when they're on the platform, because services can also change over time, right? So we need to follow up on that. Thank you. I have one more question, Peter. Should this be, in your opinion, just one pool among other pools? So one would be regular, as in round one, and another pool would be specifically a reserved amount just for existing services? Or should we organize a special round completely around this?
I don't have a strong preference, but I do kind of feel that if we mix it, like let's say it would be a third pool, just like we copy round one and do that as round two, but add this as an additional challenge, let's say, then it might be yeah, a bit much in a way. Like it's hard to predict how many people would provide a service to actually onboard. But by the nature of it, it's relatively small, and if the rewards or the incentives are decent, might attract a bunch of services, which, yeah, then to assess, like, let's say if there's, I don't know, yeah, whatever number, like 30 or 50 services, that's, yeah, at some point it becomes quite a bit of an hassle to figure everything out. So in that light, I would say perhaps separate. At the same time, yeah, as long as there's more services, I'm happy. So I wouldn't object it if it's part of a normal round.
Yeah. Well, maybe this is one of the questions we can ask the community in a proper vote. Maybe I can make one more comment, not really a question. I really like this proposal because with limited funding, we can actually have a lot of impact by onboarding existing services, and we can do it really fast. So that is one thing. And another thing that I really like about this is the opportunity that it gives every community member to participate in this, because the way I see it is that we may give an award to somebody who will onboard their service, and we can think about the amount, if it should be $1,000 or $5,000 worth of AGIX. But the tasks can be divided among different people, and also the rewards could be divided among different people. So I can imagine 3 roles here basically. So one would be a creator of or an owner of a service or potential service or model. One would be a community member that goes out into the field and asks people and runs around and finds these services and brings them to us. I think that's also extremely valuable. And then I can see a third role is actually helping this AI developer to onboard the service on our platform. Now, if there's really a need, then in the end, we will also help with that. We will never send you out in the cold if you can't make it. But of course, if a community member would be able to help with that onboarding process, that would be even better. And if they would then split the amount somehow, yeah, I think that would be a great deal. So all of you, if this goes to voting, vote for this one. It's a really good one. I can be biased here, right?
Yeah.
Just for once.
I'm biased towards.
Idea, so. Sorry, Tivo, you're saying?
I'm biased towards Joanna selection because he has the similar approach but more broader. I think that has more impact on governance stage. But again, that's my bias.
All right. Thank you. All right, I think we're on time for the next proposal. That would be me again. I have 2 more. So at some point, I didn't want to make a lot of proposals. I prefer the community to do that. But since I thought there were not that many proposals yet, and I figured that maybe for community members it's easier to react on a proposal than create a new one, especially if you're a little bit removed from everything that's going on deep funding. I thought maybe as a service to the community, create a few more proposals myself. So the first one is about token award value and whether we should award people in fiat or in a token value. So we will always disburse AGIX, but we can relate it to a dollar value, or we can relate it to just a number of tokens, for instance. And in the end, so let me start by saying this. At SingularityNET, we don't talk a lot about our token price, and that's for a reason. It's a utility token that we have. In this case, I make an exception because it is the token value does have an impact on our treasury and on what an awarded team is able to do with the number of tokens they get disbursed. So therefore, it's relevant for this specific situation. And anything I say is not investment advice. So it's about risk. So right now in round 1, we issued, or at least offered $1 million worth of AGIX tokens. And we take all the risk, the downward risk and the upward risk. So if the token price rises, that was beneficial to us. If it goes down, it means that we have to disburse more tokens. There are a few downsides to that. So right now, all the risk is at our end. So that means that if something really bad would happen in the world, and that is not unimaginable right now, it might have impact on the token price. And suppose that we would do another round for 1 million and another round for 1 million, then it could even get to a stage, theoretically, where we would not be able to pay out all the promises that we did. So that alone is a reason to maybe put some minimum there, because if we would get into that situation, it would also impact the teams themselves. Another thing is that actually I'm really positive about our project. And I think if our project is really successful, then by the utility of it, that will also be reflected in the token price, even though that is not a goal in itself of ours. And I also think it would be a little bit of a waste if we're now for the first round and the second round and the third round would disperse a lot of tokens against a very low price, which may be much higher in the future. So I'd rather have some balance there, that we don't run into a situation when the token price is really high, that we don't have any tokens more to disperse, except for the ones that still needs to be minted, because that is an ongoing thing, but in lowering quantities. So one option that I came up with here is that we will add an artificial lower end of the price. So we could say, for instance, that we will always calculate with a minimum token price of 4 or 5 cents. So even if the token price would go below that and would be 3 cents worth on the market, we will calculate it based on as if it were 5 cents. And everything on top there, we will follow the market. Right now, we're following the market exactly. The moment I make the disbursements, a few minutes before that, I calculate the exact amount based on the value of that moment. But at that time, we would still have the upper end of the risk, but we would limit ourselves a little bit on the lower end. The disadvantage here is that teams may rely on the dollar value because they have real world bills. They need to pay their developers, they need to pay their computers, etc. So if we would get into a situation that the token price would be below that amount, then it would impact them, which means that if they made promises, I will have these milestones and these deliverables. If we are not able to give them the complete amount of money that of dollar value tokens that they expected, we can also not hold them to their promises anymore. So that's a downside of that. Yeah, I think those are the most important things. So there are variations there also in the comments. So we can do part AGIX and part dollar value. I'd like to keep it always as simple as possible, and yeah, that might complicate things quite a bit in calculating the disbursements. But yeah, I would be very interested in anybody's thoughts about this. Should we continue in dollar value? Another thought that came up is having, and I also like that, is having different pools. So one pool would be guaranteed USD amount, and one pool would be you'll get a certain AGIX amount based on the current value, meaning if the price goes up, then you will benefit. So it's a bit speculative, but also that, and so that would also be a good way to split the risk a little bit by having two pools, and one pools we take all the risk and the other pools it's a shared risk, and people can then decide for themselves which pool they want to join. Also that, from an explanation point of view, is a complexity. I found out in round one, even though I thought the rules were relatively simple, there were already a lot of questions. So trying to explain this will be another hurdle, but there are downsides to every scenario. So any questions? Tivo, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think to remove all of these risks from teams is much smarter move, because you will get more impact if people or the teams doesn't have to worry about financial risk, and they join innovation funds, hackathons, because promises are like speculative promises, but they're not like, okay, if I'm not getting funded, then I might not still get the rewards. Like that would be weird risk to take. The second thing, I usually, actually, when the Cardano started, I've been like fighting against everything. Why should innovation fund give out dollars because we are working on the blockchain community. Learn to use wallets. Just get with the flow. But then again, I'm wondering that if you want to make it as easy as possible to teams, then it is actually maybe better to do also dollar amounts, like the fiat working on that side. And because I never had company before, I didn't even know that that is a value in actually receiving funds in dollar amounts, because some other institution look at that kind of value, but doesn't look the blockchain side at all. So that this way you could give option to the teammate. Do you want in AJAX or do you want in fiat? So I think that just makes it better for the teams themselves. But now the question is,
I agree. For the teams, it would be best to have fixed amount. And it would be even better if we would disperse it somehow in USD and not in tokens, at least, or a stable coin or whatever, at least for a lot of them. There's one administrative issue that I learned a short while ago. There may be a different taxation on our tokens and our token value on our treasury the moment that we would exchange our utility token for a for a stable coin or another token. So that's a whole different perspective why we would rather keep it in our utility token as it is and leave it to the teams to do the exchange. But I agree, there's a downside to the teams if we put part of the risk at them. And I also at round one, I gladly took that risk because I do have a lot of faith in the progression of our project. But then again, I'm also not against some safeguards for extreme scenarios out there. And I think in the end, that is also to the benefit of the teams. I mean, it will help the sustainability of our fund over the long time.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more point there. I think like if the end goal is also onboarding and getting more people into the ecosystem, giving out AGIX tokens is good. But even I think like in retrospectively speaking, it could also incentivize these projects to find utility for AGIX within their projects that they're building. So then they can actually utilize the tokens rather than maybe initially they think we need dollar value, but then, you know, once they actually have the tokens and they find utility for it, then they can actually utilize the tokens as they are and then exchange the rest for USD value. So I think it really depends on the type of project as well.
Very good point, Joanna. Also, because actually 25% of the awards should be used for calling other services. And practically speaking, that is not the easiest thing to do right now. So that would be a lot better when AI DSL is live. We won't go into that right now for people who don't know what I'm talking about. But actually, we want each team to reserve 25% of their token allocations to be used on our platform as the utility token that it really is. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And then from a tokenomics point of view, like supply and demand, and then it just maintains this like sustainability of the token over time, like you mentioned. So I vote for keeping it in AGX, but I also see the downfall of that as well.
Yeah, so to be very clear here, the question I was asked is not keep it in AGIX or disburse in USD. The question is, we are always disbursing in AGIX, but should it be just a number of tokens, like 100,000 tokens, or should it be $20,000 worth of tokens? And that latter thing that can change over time. Just for anybody listening to this, I know you understand it, but for anybody listening to this later on. All right, then in respect of time, let's continue to the next one. And who's the contributor of our next proposal? Ah, that's me. And that's the last one, I promise. I hope I can shut up then for a little while. So the question is, should SingularityNET or deep funding act more like an incubator? And the reason I put out that there is a little bit guided by the amount of engagement that I see right now from the community in deep funding. The voting was a relative success, but I think it could be more, and also the engagement in round one, but also in this governance experiment until now could be improved. Let's put it like that. Even though we put out 100,000 AGIX award to be disbursed on anybody who engages, not even creating a proposal, but engaging in the discussions. And you can still do that, by the way, if you're listening to this right now or watching it. If you engage on the portal in the discussions and you give your comments on what is a good and bad proposal or give alternative ideas, you would still be partaking in the project and therefore also be could earn some rewards based on that. I won't go into the details right now, but I was thinking that maybe this is a little bit too early, and maybe at this early stage it might be that we're over asking the community. So there could be a scenario where we could say, you know, for the next year or so, we will act more like an incubator. We will do all the work ourselves within SingularityNET. We will select projects and teams. We will do the guidance. We will review. And then, because I do think there should always be a community voice in this, actually, a voice. When we have found a number of projects that we think are up to our standards and will really benefit the platform, we could just ask the community to say, and we could even write the proposal for that or the summary for that and explain in very clear and understandable words what it is about and what we aim to accomplish. And then we could ask the community just to vote, are you in favor of this proposal that we will support this with our tokens or not. So it would be a little bit easier. We wouldn't expect the community to get involved deeply into all the proposals. We wouldn't expect them to read through long papers. We wouldn't expect them to comment on it, etc. We would just give very concise and clear descriptions of the proposals that we found and encountered and think are valuable, and ask the community to give their upvote basically on that. And it could be a temporary thing until we are more matured as a community. We have better processes, maybe even better tools. And then we can expand from there and see what the best way is to do that. So, any questions on that? No questions.
Yeah, I'd rather have a mission to just make a call out that everybody who wants to help with the incubation can provide them as a contributor. And I think something is happening near Catalyst too, where like in community there is discussion about contributors, and I think that is open to all, and that could create the team. Else it's I mean, would work, but I don't know. I just feel it turns into closed network a bit, and it gives the signals that we are going into a more closed group of just incubation mode ourselves. That we're not sure how to reach out yet, but we're gonna work on that and then come back in 1 year, basically.
Yeah, so it would be more centralized, I agree. And I would also prefer to have this hugely dynamic environment where teams that come out with a proposal are really supported by the community by giving constructive comments and helping them and advising them, and then that way improving their proposals, etc. I would definitely prefer that. But I can imagine we're a little bit too early, and Another benefit that I didn't mention from an incubating scenario would be that we wouldn't be so time related. So if there were a promising project that is ready now to go to the next stage, we would be a little bit more agile in choosing the moment to support. And actually, there are two moments in where I can see this happening. One moment is what I described right now as a temporary situation before the community is matured. I can also see this happening when we are matured and when the token price is higher, so the treasury is more impactful. And then we can do multiple things in parallel. Then we can have a part of the funding more incubator-like. We can have a part of the funding for existing services like Peter is proposing. And we can have part of the funding for the regular process that we are doing now. That would be kind of an other scenario here. But I just want to gawk what the community thinks about this. The only caveat here is that the people who will give feedback to this proposal are probably the people who are already really engaged in this process. So the people who will be most in favor of this proposal are the people who by definition will not vote for it. So yeah, that's something we have to live with. All right.
Yeah, me personally, I like. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I don't see your name, so I'm not sure if you want to present yourself or not. Both is fine.
Well, I'm Amen. But anyways, I like your proposal. It's just, in my opinion, it's like you said earlier that the projects that are right now working with defunding.
Sorry, I don't quite get your point. I said before that.
The projects. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry, I'm going through a tunnel.
No, I think I heard you say that you like the proposal, but
bad connection. But the projects that are working right now with SingularityNET, you said that they're already doing good, so I don't see a reason for this, honestly.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So it's going well as it is. So we don't really need to make any changes. That's a very good point. And
yeah, like you said. So
the question here would be, if we made in our selection of teams the perfect selection, the best selection, and what would happen if other teams would be selected? Maybe there were a few teams out there that didn't get a vote that could also have manifested themselves very well. And another question is, will that continue to be so in the coming rounds? But yeah, still.
Yeah, we can always, like, it's like you said, maybe introduce this idea in the third or fourth round, but
sure.
For the second, I think the way we're doing it now is pretty good.
Yeah, I think you can. These things we're testing right now, the reputation and having changes on voting weight. Technically, that is already narrowing down to more of these incubation people who want to do a more selection, and in order for them to do that now is to participate more and engage more, and then they get the power to, or weight to do a kind of this, do the selection for the next round. So this would be like centralized, but that core discussions we have had the past 2 months, and they opened up that it is going to be decentralized, but it will centralize the selection of the people who want to have more power on selection.
Yeah, that's part of it too.
I'm also just maybe afraid that if we were to change the ways now, that it might be hard to revert back. So it's something that, you know, you have to do either very quickly before people get used to something, or, you know, like it might be hard to do it after trying
Yeah.
something different and people like it.
Because you will have so much detail, so much information, like, okay, in order to decentralize this, let's teach everything we just learned in 1 year to all of these new people who don't nothing about this. And then the registration process, like 2 years, and everybody's like, it was supposed to be here already. I don't know what people think.
All right, your message is clear, people. We won't give up yet on decentralization and reputation, and we'll give it a few more rounds. And I'm also positive with this experiment. I think we can repeat this as well, and get the feeling of it, and get more visibility that we will improve. But if we don't, I'll get back to this. Alrighty. Enough of my projects, my proposed projects. By the way, just as I mentioned, we are not covering all proposals here. We invited people voluntarily to propose, but we don't have everybody here for different reasons. Maybe we'll create another opportunity next week. And otherwise, you can also get information on the other proposals on our portal. So please go there as well. But for now, we'll go to Joanna. Joanna, you created 2 proposals. Which one would you like to start out with?
I'd like to start with the one of having a continuous mission dedicated to improving Deep Fund. I think it relates to what we were just talking about for trying to maintain decentralization. This is just some insight that I've gathered from being involved in other governance or decentralized governance projects like Catalyst, for example, is I feel like something that we've been facing is there's not like a feedback loop that's that works per se, and people like after certain funds there's a lot of feedback and there's a lot of like questions and there's a lot of improvements that the community wants to do, and it's like, okay, yes, you can put in a proposal, but usually those proposals have to fit into like some category. For example, we want to improve Catalyst processes and we want to build a tool, but this goes under like dApps in development, so it kind of gets lost in the weeds. I think having a dedicated mission that's just for improving decentralized governance within, let's say, Singularity, because most of the missions are like, yes, we want to bring in more people to the ecosystem and we want to help improve the marketplace and whatnot, but usually people's focus go to the applications and like what they can utilize from Deep Fund, but they forget that Deep Fund and the tools and the infrastructure actually has to grow for these things to be for these things to work. So I think, and I know eventually maybe those missions will be decided by the community, but I think having a set mission for all funds that's just dedicated to Deep Fund processes might help with like maintainability, might help with onboarding, because some people, they might have, let's say, marketing expertise that they could help with Deep Fund marketing, but they're not AI experts. So that could help also onboard people from other ecosystems that could help with like decentralized governance in a sense. So it kind of like opens door for more community interactions, and just helps grow the community and decentralized governance processes from within continuously. But yeah, that was just my 2 cents.
Can I make a first reaction? Yes, I can. In a way, I totally agree. Let's start with that. I think that's important, and I would also love to have part of the funding allocated to improving processes and tools. I think that's important. I'm not sure if you're aware, but in the first round we already so actually we had 3. I think it was 3 objectives for proposals. Proposals could either create a service or use a service that is already on the platform, or it could involve some kind of marketing effort, or it could be a proposal about improving the tooling of deep funding. And to be honest, while we were in round 1, I thought that it might have been better to isolate these things in separate pools, because that way we could allocate the maximum amount of money to it, so make sure that not all proposals are marketing proposals. And also to make the proposers have created clear choice in which of these buckets do I belong, because there were one or two things where it was a little bit gray, and I wanted to make them speak out. What exactly are you aiming for here? So it would also have clarity. So I would say you have my vote for this. And in a sense, we already did it in the first round. If it were up to me, in the next round, we would continue to do it, but then make a separate pool around it. Anyone else?
Well, in a way, I see this experiment. It's not a proposal round as such, but it's kind of it's not properly funded through the portal, but through incentives. This 100K AGIX it gets somewhat close to it. But I'm in favor of what you're proposing.
Yeah, and that's what I mentioned, is just kind of extending this experiment and kind of making it concrete, at least for a couple of missions, to help set the basis and the foundations of what decentralized governance looks within DeepFund, and how, the tools, the documentation, like everything could be maintained. There could be other inputs, and you can get other people from, like, for example, the Swarm team, how they're being involved in the sense they could put in proposals to help contribute in that aspect. There are other people working in decentralized governance. So yeah, kind of splitting it into focusing more on decentralized governance as well as all the other missions.
Yeah, one important takeaway for me here is that we shouldn't maybe limit it to tools and marketing, but make it a little bit wider than that. If somebody would, for instance, see the need for creating better documentation, or a better website for that matter, or whatever,
Absolutely.
We could make that more open. So
yeah, it's literally like anything from creating informative content for onboarding to proposal improvement ideas, platform integrations, for example. Like, a lot of people are in tech, are in software. They could help think software like Sway find integrations that could possibly enhance their platforms or whatnot. So it just invites a lot of new ideas into those kind of improvements.
I think for these rounds, the limitation would be that we would require some deliverable. So if we're talking about processes, for instance, like we're doing today, that is still very valuable. I really would like to have the community involved in that as much as possible. But it wouldn't be a proper subject for a proposal. So a proposal would need to have some deliverable where some effort needs to be put in my mind. But Mihai, you have something to add here?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about the topic of what makes the difference between Joanna's current proposal and what we are currently attempting to do, because we are at the moment actually attempting to do a constant maintenance and constant iteration of the defunding program. And what would be 2 or 3 main differences between what we are already doing and what she's envisioning, what you are envisioning, Joanna? What would be 2 or 3 things, actionable things, that we could do in order to accomplish this constant maintenance or constant iteration, and that we are not already doing?
Well, for one example, this workshop, what is happening, this is somewhat a service to help others to understand what is deep funding, how it's going. So that current round, these options we have, doesn't really give the opportunity or like explain yourself. My proposal is to create 4 sessions where I tell people how to write proposal in deep funding, or have 4 sessions about what is deep fund, how to train people to take up governance, or then even how to connect to communities, what kind of spin-offs there are, what kind of other alternatives are where people did. So these are like just connecting people already. Another thing what Joanna mentioned was like infographics, or like content that people just read. Like John said that he has a text and website about TEEP funding, but nobody knew. Maybe there is somebody has different like funnels like me. I like my report. If there would have been my report of TEEP fund, I probably have known it. And some like to do video contents, animations, and these are all services which are like, yeah, I can do it. I just need to research it. I need to learn it. I have to deliver it. And usually are like 1 month stuff, or like depends how many series you want. So there are services like that what you offer on that proposal, which not yet kind of made such. Like the marketing is kind of that, but it was a bit more like AI services marketing, and that it kind of got lost the ability that we could do more of these kinds of events and just coordination.
Maybe Joanna, you would like to add to this yourself because it was your proposal.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really like, I wouldn't say it's going to be a comparison to what you're doing right now, more of like an extension, and just kind of like making it more concrete, especially if it's like what I've found, or like this is from personal experience, let's say with Catalyst, is like there's a lot of ways that I would personally want to contribute in terms of community, in terms of content, onboarding, whatever improvements, but there's no, like, I don't think the value is really seen or it's understood by the wider community, because there's not like a set. I think the decentralized governance in a sense is still really, really new. And I think having like a set mission that's there to just inspire people and tell them what it is about and how they can contribute to this is something that could like also bring awareness to what we're trying to do in terms of like implementing it within Singularity as well.
Any last words, Mihai, or is it clear, and can we continue to the next one?
Absolutely clear, and I absolutely agree with Joanna that we have a lot of things to improve and to iterate upon. As I was also saying, we are in the process of that, but there's a lot of things to be added on the board, and it sounds like a method of further incentivizing ambassadors from the ambassador community to further expand and market our vision and our purpose and our ways of approaching this funding program in a decentralized manner. So yeah, we have a lot of things to do, but we should really think about how to incentivize people.
Cool. I fully subscribe to that. All right, Joanna, your second proposal.
Okay, this proposal, I feel like I now take full responsibility on this because it was just like an idea in my head and I didn't, I think, execute it very well. And I think there's misunderstandings in the comments, but they're all very insightful. So I'm just going to say what I initially thought, and then maybe we can like touch on other people and what they thought. So I was wondering if maybe it would be a good idea to limit funding for proposals or projects based on like the stage of where they're at right now and like when in the time that they put in the proposal. So for example, if their project is still in ideation stage or it's in like design or development, what I've noticed also from other projects is that some people might ask for a lot more funding than they require. And I know there's a breakdown, but also I don't think it's very clear. Like I don't think one project that's still in ideation should have the same funding as someone that's like, you know, in design and development. And if we can somehow separate that and limit funding based on the stages, that could be beneficial. And also providing some guidelines for these proposals of like, okay, if you're just coming up with this idea and you need support for this, this is how much you can ask. And then it would also incentivize people to kind of look into their roadmap a bit better and be more clear with what their asks. And then also it'd probably distribute funds more fairly. Like we've seen in Catalyst, there's some projects that literally take up, like they monopolize the whole fund and then there's no room left for other proposals. So maybe somehow distribute those funds like that and optimizing it that way. But in terms of execution, I know it's difficult because it might be hard to it maybe circles back to the experts conversation of like, okay, who's to decide if this project is actually in this stage versus, you know, it's industry specific. I'm sure it's depending on the project as well. Like if there's, like someone mentioned in the comments, if it's for robotics versus you're just building an algorithm, obviously, even if they're both in ideation, one's going to need more funding. But I feel like if we were able to collect that sort of data somehow, or like at least within the proposal itself, maybe ask for people to categorize their projects somehow. Maybe with time we'll learn better what those stages look like. But yeah, that's just what I was thinking.
The proposal is clear to me as you describe it right now. I do have some questions or remarks, but does anybody else have anything to ask about this?
Not ask.
All right. Well, then you have something to remark, Tifo, or?
Yeah. Well, one insight, one thought process. One thing what I liked in Catalyst about the scouting school, one challenge where the challenge setting expected that people ask maximum $5,000 worth of ADA, and what that allowed to do was that there was so many proposals which got now funded, and now there is more people who are now kind of aligned. Okay, what kind of education onboarding form, and it was the challenge itself was very scoped down to like some very specific solutions, and then you had so many of them now coming at the same time. Like how can we improve or help this challenge, and that is quite impactful compared to the ability that sometimes you have like 10 different teams coming up with proposals and only one gets funded and the rest of them just kind of clean them out or try to maintain themselves. And this helps to create community, I think, when more people get funded. And an idea through that, what like the staging felt like, because I was looking at the Victor analysis, and it's still kind of chunked down to the bottom. So everybody who are asking less do get less attention, and the rewards will kind of don't reach to them. So I was wondering if you can have like a dynamic ratio in that based on that current challenge and the total voting power, and with the top 10 who is asking like 3 times more money for his, like, let's say 15,000 and then 5,000, then you have, we don't have to do it like linear, but some kind of logarithmic that they have to have about 2 times more rewards, like voting power, to get like overranked by that one. So it creates this dynamic that these lower proposals, if they like doing smaller proposals, but they usually takes more time, and if there are big proposals and they gamify the system that, oh, I had this $50,000, I make split it into 10,000 proposals. If they still put effort into like explaining everything, it's much better, because then you kind of see as a project manager what they're doing, how they're implementing, and you see more detail compared to one big proposal. But if they want to go big proposal, usually they use high-level discussions. They make proposals already a bit differently, and then you would expect more voting power on there, and not to like compare them with these lower projects who put more detail on less funding. So basically, the idea is that gives more chance to the lower proposals to reach higher in ranking, because they will need less attention from voting power.
Yeah, so let me summarize, and the way I understand it is, you say if you have a higher demand for a higher reward, then you also need to have more votes, basically. And that way it is a risk. So you can, if you think your project is really valuable, so it warrants a higher reward, then you would expect more people to vote on it, but the risk is a little bit higher. So I think that's a very good mechanism. I think it might be interesting to have an experiment on that. I think I once did it on a spreadsheet, something similar. but I have to find it back. So it's good to have this refreshed. Actually, what we did in round one, because what our experience was from Catalyst is that most of the winning teams were the smaller teams, and it was harder to get at that time a higher reward for one specific teams. That's why we split it into pools. One pool with a maximum of 150k and one pool with a maximum of 40k. So that's a really simple way to distinguishing it. And in advance, we could allocate a certain amount to that. So what you're suggesting here, Tivo, would be more like a gradual thing. So yeah, it's definitely something to think about. But both ways, Joanna, would be already other different measures to mitigate what you're saying, the risk of one team or a few teams getting all of the rewards. Another thing that I would like to point out here is, if you're saying I like the idea of having projects that are in an ideation stage and give them also award and maybe also some clear instructions of when they would reach the stage where they can go to a next phase. I think it would be great to have more projects that would be more about ideation. So we wouldn't need to have a change in the rules that would say it has to benefit the platform, because these kind of proposals wouldn't benefit the platform directly. There wouldn't be a service at the end of the line yet. It would just be in preparation for creating a service later on. But I do think it's very beneficial to have more ideation going on there, and maybe also have other people embrace it and then start collaborating with that team and helping it to make it realize. One little bit of risk I see there is the time between rounds. So if you have an ideation and you don't know exactly when the next round will be, if it will be in 3 months or in 6 months, then that can be a long time to wait to go from ideation to the next stage. So that's something to think about. Maybe if we get into a clear rhythm, which is very predictable, that would be easier to implement at that stage. Yeah, another thing is that it might already be possible, but just with the current framework, but just ask for a lower reward. So instead of asking 40,000, just ask 5,000 for preparation. The only thing that we would need to change for real is the rules and saying, well, you don't need to deliver or use a service, but if you're creating something leading to that, that might also be sufficient.
Yeah, I think the trade-off here is somewhat of like, in a sense, this incentivizes people to keep coming back and collaborating with people through DeepFund and the community, and like kind of like you said, bringing that project to realization through this process. But then also maybe that raises the question of like, do we want to keep funding the same projects at different stages and not give room to other projects? So it's kind of that that's something to think about as well.
Yeah. It's an interesting topic. I've heard more, and there's also another topic about proposal about ideation, which has some overlap with this. And I heard other people express their ideas of having phases. So you first have to go through phase 1 for a lower amount before you're eligible for a higher amount. There are pros and cons for all these things, but yeah, let's not go through all of those right now. But it's an interesting topic to discuss in one of our governance meetings anyway. So for anybody listening here and you're interested in just discussing these kind of topics, you're also welcome in our regular bi-weekly meetings to discuss all these kinds of things in depth. All right, then let's go to our last presentation of this session, which is right on time, I would say. Our own Mihai. Thank you for submitting, Mihai. And yeah, let's hear what you have to say.
All right, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to introduce my idea to defunding. As a shameless plug, I will paste my proposals link in chat so you can have an idea of what this is about. The main question revolves around, should we incentivize community members to evaluate deliverables on each promised milestone? I've noticed that defunding actually has a rather limited evaluation process on deliverables, and for this reason, I think that further resources should be allocated and used to incentivize community members in order to evaluate set deliverables of funded proposals once ready for review. And by doing so, I think that our program would benefit by driving further engagement from both already existing community members, but also by benefiting from, let's say, free marketing per se, into driving new community members into engaging and collaborating by commenting, by reviewing, and by actually contributing into expressing their views on deliverables. Of course, this revolves around the eternal topic of who's there to say so, who's an expert and who's not. But I think that our community is already, and we should aim that it should be comprised of a wide variety of people that have different expertise, different fields of interest, ranging from development, engineering, up to marketing or management. And as we all know, defunding projects are funded not just for delivering AR services, but also for marketing themselves, in order for those AR services to be actually used and implemented on a wide range scale. So as an envision, I think that by allocating funds in order to incentivize people, we would get more traction. For example, here's today's meeting, of course, a very limited one as it turns out in terms of a turnaround for people that participate, but this is just the phase one. This is just an initial experiment into governance, and we are actually setting the base stones of a decentralized governance in what considers our vision for this form of organization. And I think that the benefits far outweigh the risks in terms of bureaucracy, in terms of overcomplicating ourselves, because by attracting more people, we would be able to attract more points of view. We may never know results or solutions by ourselves, as I also haven't documented every aspect in my own proposal, because if voted to be accepted, my proposal, I envision it to be turned into a mission in which the community would be enabled to further elaborate and propose the ways in which this could be implemented. And this would be successful, I think, in a way in that projects that are already funded would not be policed or taxed or judged upon their deliverables, but that in a way that important signs of alarm could be drawn, could be raised, without having to rely on a centralized resource, even if that means one person, one organization, or a limited group of people. And I think incentivization relies at the base of that. And I think that the success relies upon collaboration. And having said that, I would like to know your questions or concerns on this topic.
Let me give a little bit of context before I give the rest of you an opportunity. I already had a semi-lengthy conversation with Mihai on this today. My vision on this is that we would create a portal, as we do already, where we will present all the deliverables created by the teams and also the meetings, etc. And you can already see them there. So everything is open and transparent and for everybody to see. And in my vision, I would also see people commenting on that and asking the teams questions and being critical on that. So yeah, some collaboration and engagement of the community on milestones and on progress of teams would be very welcome. The other angle of that is that what we try to create is a coaching environment where we will help and support the teams to become the best that they can be. And what we would like to avoid, the other end of that would be like a bureaucratic entity where all our efforts are gone into policing and looking at the small print and etc. I think nobody will benefit from that. But of course, there's something in between. We need to have some thresholds in line, as we already do. Like I said, I'm really happy with this approach of deliverables and disbursements that are related to the deliverables that the teams have committed to by themselves. And at this moment, it is working. But yeah, if we can have a better process of evaluating these milestones, I would be in favor of that. But it would need to be very agile and timely, because if team has some milestone delivered, I would also like to be able to pay out on that as soon as possible and not wait another month, for instance. So those are my contextual comments here.
Sure, Jan, and thank you very much. If I may address your comments, I think that the key question here is, should we stop projects in their tracks if the community thinks that they are not respecting their promised deliverables? And I don't think this is the main objective. I think that projects should continue to develop regardless of their hurdles, regardless of their problems, regardless of their mishaps. We are probably not yet there in systems or procedures to judge that. We attempt to get there, but we are not there yet. However, there should be steps at which the community, for example, between funded stages of promised deliverables, the community should be able to raise some signs of alarms, not for the purpose of policing, but for the purpose of further incentivizing and drawing the attention of these project managers or project owners in order to step up their game or to follow up on promises. I'm not thinking about increasing bureaucracy. I obviously hate that also, and we don't have the resources to do that. And even if we did, this is not what we should be after. We should be very empathetic towards certain situations. We should understand when certain deadlines are not met. However, in the greater scheme of things, I think that incentivizing community is the key phrase here.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. Like, I think what's, at least to me, beautiful about this new Web3 world is, like, I'm a product manager. I've worked in product management in software, and something that's very different that now exists with community is you're like able to continuously gather feedback from your users as you're building. So if we were to phrase it like that for those projects, like rather than like you're being policed and like you have to commit to deadlines, it's like you're almost getting free feedback as you're building from the community. And then in terms with the community, it's like, okay, by the time this project is going to go live, you're going to get everything that you need. So you're not going to have to wait for future upgrades. You're not going to, you know, so it's like a win-win on both ends. So I think it's really just about the verbiage and how that's communicated to both ends, like the products that are being built and the community themselves. But I think this like constant feedback is very beneficial for everyone involved. So yeah, I definitely agree with you, Mihai.
I agree with you, Joanna. It's all about the wording, especially as you said that this is the opportunity for projects to receive free feedback and to constantly iterate and to be kept in line in a positive way, not in a policing way, not in a way that refrains their funding, not in a way that stops their development, but in a way that, for example, draws their attention to the fact that you've been allocated X% of your funds for marketing, and halfway through your project, you haven't done anything to seed your communities. Because after all, even if you deliver an AI module onto the Singularity marketplace, you will need to market that module yourself in order to make it relevant and obvious and usable and well known. So I think that we don't necessarily need very specialized people. That's why I refrain myself from using expert as a word in my proposal at any given moment, because I don't think we are yet at the phase of deciding who is or who is not an expert, but we are at a phase in which we should incentivize our community to engage more, to participate more, because at this moment we are people expecting more in this conference call, and I think incentivizing is the key.
I think nobody can object to that, Mihai. We all want more engagement, and yeah, having the community help, support, guide, but also be a little bit critical on projects during their development process is very valuable. I can also imagine a scenario where a team will pivot from their original idea. And then the question would be to us, how are we going to treat that? Because this is not anymore what the community voted for. But maybe that pivot will signify a much better idea. And this would be a typical situation where some community involvement would be very helpful. Of course, we can always put things up to a vote again, but I'd like not to do that if not really necessary. But yeah, some guidance and engagement and attention already would be very beneficial. Tivo.
It feels like this proposal is suggested too early, because seeing the current results of and the way the results are presented, it's like the feedback collection isn't really yet there yet. And the second approach, if we add like opportunity for community to give services, that would include also an opportunity for some group to come up and be the ones who take up the work to go through all the processes, because they actually want to know all of the platforms and they are willing to do it. Having it like, let's have a pot of money and then people who give feedback they get. I think there is going to be a lot of gamification, and then we have to figure out, okay, how do we anti-game that, and this will create some governance discussions. But like it has such, I think, too much overhead right now, as we don't even have enough examples in this funding, that I would rather see, okay, the fund is ending. Do we have now 20 teams and so much information? And then I also would like to have better platform opportunities where this feedback is collected. But the focus on building a way to share the results is more important currently than in finding, incentivizing a random amount of people to give feedback.
Well,
but I do have idea that like, I think it's worth to know a lot of people too that these kinds of proposals exist, because I think I missed first deep funding round, but now that you mentioned this, there was I already forgot, but basically there was a new group who were sharing some DAO platforms, some investing and tokenomic stuff, and I was like, oh well, that is something we should partner up with, because they are working on like a similar stuff. but most of them probably don't even know that in SingulariNET that our platform got funded and working on integrations and marketing.
Well, Tivo, I very much appreciate your points of view and expressed concerns. At this level of development in the defunding program, I actually think that the benefits outweigh the risks in terms of gamification, because as we all know, rules are there to be gamified in general, and they are there to be improved and reiterated upon in a gradual process. There shouldn't be any fixed rule that is permanent. There shouldn't be any fixed proposal or process that is permanent. But I think that at this stage, further incentivizing the community into being engaged at every stage of each funded project's development progress and promise milestones would offer us further exposure, an increased community, increased governance, engagement, more proposals, more ideas, more points of view, more eyes.
Right. I'm going to interrupt you here, Mihai, because you can make this list for
exactly.
forever, I'm sure. We are 17 minutes in your proposal, where there was time for 10.
Thank you very much.
And the reason that I'm interrupting you, I do have a hard stop in not too much time, a really hard stop. But I just learned that we have one other visitor here, Eamon, that actually also created 2 proposals. So I was allowing a little bit more time for this one, but since actually Eamon made 2 proposals, but I would propose, Eamon, that if you would like to present something, that you would limit it to 1 proposal, to the one that you prefer, and then we can spend another 10 minutes on that. Maybe 12, but that is for me, that is the limit, to be honest.
Yeah, so I would probably focus on the one about the additional funding for projects that would need it, just to make sure that, like, hey, if they need more financing, more money, they're able to actually go ahead and carry out their project all the way through. And I think that's more important right now, because obviously, if you run out of money, you can't keep going. So that's the one that I would focus on.
Yeah, okay. So that's one. Should we create a process in which successful projects receive additional funding after tangible results?
Yes, and I guess obviously there should be like processes in place to make sure that, hey, they're actually delivering on their promises and they're effective.
So would you like to elaborate a little bit on that?
I mean, I guess the additional funding amount would just be based off of the project itself. Obviously, each project would require different amounts than others, and it kind of piggybacks off of some of the other proposals of making sure that these projects are actually doing what they're supposed to do. So it's like a feedback loop to like checks and balances, if you might say. But yeah, also the amount would maybe be up to the community. Like if the community doesn't think that they require $50,000, we can give them like $20,000. Like obviously it just depends from project to project, but the main concern from that proposal, the reason why I put it up there is just because like any good company, any good project in the world obviously needs more money if they're going to keep going, especially at the beginning stages, so that way they can get up and running. And I don't want like a good idea or a good potential project on SingularityNET to die just because they don't have money. That should be the last concern.
There are 2 remarks that come to my mind right now. I'll state them both shortly. The first one is, suppose that we have a process laid out like that would give existing projects that have been funded some kind of preference in the next round. It might lead to a situation where our funding is channeled into just fewer projects. And it seems like that is just the thing that Joanna here would like to avoid, having a few teams and getting all the funding because they are most visible. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say is that why would we need an additional process for that? Because it's perfectly fine to do that already. Any project that's started, and some I even advise to do that, can start small, and then when they've succeeded, go in the next round, and in the next round ask for more money based on their accomplishments in the first round. And I think a project like that would already have a big advantage because they are known and they have proven to the community that they could deliver upon their promises. So my question here would be, is it really necessary to create additional processes or rules to facilitate this?
I guess it wouldn't be necessary. I just maybe I wasn't aware of the fact that projects can reapply in the second, third, fourth round. So that's kind of why I presented that idea. But if that process is in place already, obviously we don't have to like do anything extra from our part. But yeah, it sounds like then that shouldn't be a problem. But as long as like the main concern of why I brought it up in the first place is just to make sure that good ideas, good projects don't have to worry about money running out. That was the number one thing.
Yeah, cool. So that's also the reason why we had the bigger pool, to give fewer projects, high quality projects, a little bit more funding than just give 10,000 to everybody, but also give some more substantial amounts. So I agree to that. And yeah, in some cases, people were really doubting what they had to do, and they had like 3 things or a big project. So I told them, well, you can either split your big project up in 3 shorter ones, as long as they are all of them self-sufficient, and that gives you more chance of winning at least part of your amounts. Or indeed, instead of starting with this really big thing, similarly to what Joanna was actually proposing, is skim it down to a first stage, which is more realistic and which you can do with a smaller amount, and then come back in the next stage for the next phase of that project. I think in general, what my guideline is in this whole program is to keep the rules as minimal as possible, and rather leave it, for instance, in this case, to the community to vote whether they think this project deserves a next round, than trying to fit all that in all kind of complex rules. It's very easy to make 100,000 rules. It's very hard to get rid of them again.
Yeah.
So,
sorry to cut you off, but would there be like maybe something that would like pop up on the second round of proposal? Let's say like a project applies for a second round of funding. There's maybe something there that would tell all the voters that, hey, this is, just so you know, this is a second round of funding for this specific project. So we actually know that, hey, this is their second time or third time asking for funding. Would that be also part of the proposal?
That would be
yeah, sure. Well, every team can do that by themselves, right? They can link to a previous proposal. They can explain how they can build on that. And actually, there were also teams in round 1 who had multiple proposals and also interlinked them and saying, well, this is... And actually, there were also teams that were awarded, 2 of them, with 2 proposals that were interlinked. So one was more generic and the second was a kind of implementation based on the generic thing. And there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that in between rounds. And I think it will make your proposal all the better if you already have a proven track record.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Then yeah, I guess if anyone else has any comments on that, but for the most part you answered my questions with that.
I'm quite interested in how it will shape up, because right now there's not too many milestones have passed. Let's say if there would be a round 2 starting tomorrow, I would like to know who's already part of round 1. So I think, yeah, would be good to have maybe somehow we can require that indicator, or I mean, it's just
Honestly, I think that's very insightful. I think it's like somewhat of a double-edged sword, because something I've also realized with Catalyst is people are incentivized to vote. So they subconsciously also maybe vote for familiar projects that they know or they voted on before. So that kind of centralizes funds in a sense. It would be really cool to kind of incentivize or implement some sort of process. And I know it's hard to do that, but ideally we're like, please at least vote for one new proposal. So then we make sure that there's newcomers into the space, but that's for another discussion.
Well, there is a way that we can nudge that at least. So in terms of reputation, if we have 4 or 5 rounds below our belt, then we can give a reputation on voting behavior. And one element in that reputation could be that voters who consistently vote for the same projects and are not very diversified in their voting, if we can analyze that, it's not the easiest thing, but we could give less voting weight, for instance. That would be one thing. And I'm sure, so this is one of the things where I can find 5 solutions in a really matured and engaging version of deep funding with a full-featured reputation system. But yeah, until we get there will be some manual adjustments needed, maybe.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but that's, I guess, my proposal. And the second one was just about like penalizing projects that are not actually doing anything or that are misusing funds, and that kind of goes off of what Mihai was saying with his proposal. And I think that's kind of important too. I was going to make a comment on your proposal. There should be like, maybe not penalize them right away, but if there's like 3 strikes and you're out, like the community can, review a project, give them feedback. If they don't listen, give them our feedback a second time, but then third time, like at that point, it's just bad behavior and they're just not doing anything. So there should be some type of process in place where it's like, if a project or a team is continuously not delivering on their promises, then yeah, there should be a penalty, I think.
Exactly my point, and thank you very much for that. You practically summarized what I was trying to say. We are looking for multiple signs and multiple ways of drawing alarms, and not actually ways of directly penalizing or stopping projects, but just decentralizing evaluations based on incentivization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could add to that it's actually impossible to not deliver 3 times. Because if you don't deliver 1 time, you can't go further. It stops until you deliver, and then you can go to the next stage. That's how it works right now. And of course, we can be a little bit lenient here, now and there, and if we feel that is appropriate. But yeah, people only get paid for the milestones they committed on themselves, and they have to deliver them. Well, maybe not always in a specific order. That depends a little bit, but most of the time there is some order there. But in any case, they have to deliver something before they get, and something that was agreed upon in advance before they get something awarded.
So like a project that's requesting, let's say, $50,000 in AGIX, they, for example, have 5 different milestones in their first proposal, and they were awarded it. So then they go through the first milestone and they don't really do a good job. At that point, they only got $10,000 worth of AGIX?
Yeah, almost right. So what we do, we give the teams $5,000 worth of AGIX when they have signed the contract. To get them started, and also because by the time they've signed the contract, already a lot of effort has gone into it. So I think that might also be rewarded. I actually had a discussion with some team members at the early stage that they said, well, is it fair? We first have to do the work and then you will pay out. Why don't you pay out in advance for each milestone? So we are already quite strict there. We first ask them for their milestone. So indeed, if a team has $50,000 awarded, it has been broken down in 5 milestones of 10K. Then for each of this milestone, before it is paid out, they need to give some kind of proof within brackets that they actually did what they promised.
Okay, and then if a project that does not deliver on their promises after a while, like the money that was going to be allocated to them, does it just go back into the defunding pool?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, ideally we would like to get something back if they don't do it, but that's a hard discussion. And I'm also acting under the assumption that most teams are self-motivated and want to make it succeed. And if for some reason they need to abandon their project halfway or whatever, then it's probably a bigger disappointment for them already than for us, and there are probably good reasons for that. Actually, there's one team right now that told me that for personal reasons, which I can't disclose, they are not able to continue. And they also told me they will pay back the $5,000 worth of HEIX that I already disbursed to them. So, you know, that's the ideal way. We don't have to police. We try to help them. We support them. We're reasonable people. And they did park it in a stable coin. So maybe the exchange rate is a little bit different now than it was when it was disbursed. But that's the kind of reasonable best that we'd like to behave towards each other.
Yeah, that's, in an ideal world, everyone would act that way, yes.
I know it's not an ideal world, but we're trying to make it one. Listen, guys and girls and anyone in between. I have to stop it here. I really have a hard stop. I have something else on my plate. Thanks a lot for your contributions. I hugely enjoyed it, and it was also insightful and learning. So I get new ideas and new input. And to be honest, we're a relatively small group here tonight, but it doesn't mean it was less valuable. It was really good, and even in this setting, I would love to continue it that way.
Thank you very much,
all.
Ian.
Thank you so much.
And see you next time.
Thank you very much,
guys.
everyone.
Thanks a lot.
See you next time. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.